We know there's a special significance to tzedakah that we give on Purim, because one of the 4 mitzvahs of Purim is the giving of tzedakah to at least 2 poor people. What's unique about Purim is that the sages say that we should not be at all discriminating when we're giving tzedakah on Purim. Instead, kol ha'poshet yad noisnim lo. Whoever extends a hand, you give. You don't ask questions. But the expression, whoever extends a hand, has special meaning too. It's not whoever asks. It's not whoever pleads, begs. On Purim, all you have to do is extend your hand, open your palm, and you are given. And the Rebbe told us that that means that God behaves that way. That on Purim, you don't need to beg, you don't need to plead, you don't need special prayers. Just open your hand, and you will receive not only what you need, because nobody knows what you need, you didn't say. You are given everything more than you expect. So on Purim, God is extremely generous. Just open your hand and you will get. It's almost like saying, just open your heart. Just recognize that you need and you will be given. So there's something very special about Purim, other than any other holiday. And we're told that all the other holidays will lose their excitement because every day will be holy. So what will be so special about other holidays? But Purim is going to be unique even after Mashiach comes. So on the day of Purim, which is celebrated on the 14th of Adar, because the war in general against our enemies in Persia took place on the 13th of Adar, and on the 14th, we were able to celebrate. But in the city of Shushan itself, there were more enemies, there were more plotters and schemers, and so the battle went on a second day. Esther actually asked that that be permitted. And so the war continued into the 14th, and they rested and were able to celebrate on the 15th. And so the people of Shushan, which was the capital of Persia at the time, the people in Shushan, they celebrate on the 15th, the day that they were done with the battle. And that is called Shushan Purim. The Purim in Shushan. Now it's interesting, we don't really know where Shushan is. Somewhere in Persia, but it's not a very identifiable place. And that's because when Ahasuerus became king, he was very insecure, because he's not a Persian, and he was not of royal blood. And so whatever the capital of Persia was, he felt a little awkward and a little uncomfortable establishing his home and his palace there, because he didn't really belong there. So to give himself a little fame and a little power, he moved the capital to a place and he named it Shushan. And that, during his reign, was the capital of Persia. The word Shushan comes from the word Shoshana, which means a rose. I don't know what Ahasuerus' purpose in choosing that name was, but by divine providence, the name of the city was Shushan, because the miracle of Purim that took place in Shushan was the tshuva that Jews did because of the discomfort and the pain that they were facing. There is something about a rose that has that really special scent, aroma. And they say that it is so sweet and so pleasant because of the thorns. The thorns bring out the best in the rose. Like the expression, a rose among the thorns. Not only does it stand out as something pleasant in an unpleasant setting, but it's the unpleasantness of the thorns that actually makes the rose special. So the tshuva that comes from the discomfort is a greater, higher, more pleasant tshuva. And that's what happened in Persia in the days of Purim. So the fact that it was named Shushan, for whatever thinking or reason Achashverosh had for doing that, it turns out that God was preparing the cure before the problem. Before there was a decree against the Jews, Shushan was already named the rose. The tshuva that would come from Haman's making Jews uncomfortable and bringing out the best in them. We might say that the goodness, the greatness that was brought out on Purim was the nature of the connection between the Jewish soul and God. The Jewish soul is a godly being and therefore cannot be separated from God. And when something comes between them, the soul suffers separation anxiety. It can't tolerate separation. It can't. Sometimes you might even want to be separated because of the danger, because of the threat. Like after World War II, many Jews were afraid to identify themselves as Jews because they thought it was too dangerous. Even when, for logical reasons or human reasons or selfish reasons or unholy reasons, you feel like you want to create some distance, some independence, your soul can't. You can't. And so we have the Hasidic description of a Jew. A Jew is someone who by nature does not want to be separated and cannot be separated from God and godliness. On Pesach, for example, the fact that we don't want to be separated from God became very visible and very prominent. We were enslaved for a long time, an entire generation, but we didn't want to be there. And so when the time came to leave, we left with our heads held high. This is what we were looking forward to. This is what we wanted, to make our way to Har Sinai and get closer to God. That's the nature of the Jew who wants to be connected to God. That came out much more strongly after we received the Torah, and we now had a method by which to be connected to God. But then there's also the aspect of the Jew that cannot. It's not an option, it's not a choice. So as far as human quality is concerned, Pesach is a greater holiday because we chose, we want, we think about it. That describes our nature. We want to be connected to God. And now that we have the Torah, we want to fulfill all the mitzvahs. That's our nature. This is what we want. And it's a great compliment to what we are. But the aspect of the soul that cannot be separated from God is not a compliment to us because it's involuntary. It's not our choice, not our opinion. It's not something great about us as human beings. But it separates us radically from the rest of the world. Other nations can want to be closer to God as well. And when Mashiach comes, they will want to be closer to God. So what makes the Jew truly unique is that not only do we want to, but we have no choice. We cannot be separated from God. That came out on Purim. On Purim, we weren't asked, do you want to leave Egypt? Do you want to bow to an idol? Do you want to convert to another religion? And we refused and chose to be Jewish. We weren't given any choice at all in Purim. Haman just wanted to eliminate. He didn't care what you believed, what you practiced, what your religion was. He didn't like the fact that you're Jewish. What was it about the fact of being Jewish that he couldn't stand? He wanted everyone to worship him. And he knew that it might take a while, but he could achieve that and have everyone worship him just given enough time. But he also knew that the Jew would never, because we can't. And so he had no choice but to eliminate the Jews. Of course, he couldn't do that either. And so what came out in our awareness of who we are? We really discovered and saw with our own eyes that we cannot be separated. And so we have an inner confidence. We may be individually weak. We may be collectively weak. We may find ourselves in very challenging circumstances, really made uncomfortable by the thorny issues in life. And, in our history, we've had no shortage. But the Jewish soul is such that no matter what the thorns do, we remain roses. That is the story of Purim, and that's why it happened in a city called Shushan. And that's what makes the Shushan Purim even more special than Purim itself. Because on Purim, we didn't know what to call ourselves. What is this thing in us that we cannot be separated from God? On the second day, in the city of Shushan, where the battle was even more intense, the thorns were worse. There we discovered we are the rose among the thorns. Here's another interesting thought. After the miracle and the great victory, and to the Jews there was peace and joy and gladness and honor, we still lived in Persia, scattered in 127 countries under Persian rule. So the sages said, we don't want Shushan, the city, to become more popular than Jerusalem. We don't want to forget that we don't belong in Shushan, we belong in Jerusalem. So the sages made an interesting practice. Shushan was surrounded by a wall. So the sages said that not only should the people in Shushan celebrate on the 15th of the month, but that every city that is walled since the time of Joshua should have the same practice as Shushan. And what they meant was Jerusalem. Jerusalem was a walled city in the time that Joshua entered Israel. There were other cities that we're not very sure of, but we were definitely sure of Jerusalem. And so the sages said that along with Shushan, celebrating Purim on the 15th, the people in Jerusalem should also celebrate on the 15th. Not only to remind us that we belong in Jerusalem, but also to keep Shushan from becoming the most popular or the most famous city in Jewish history. So it's like remembering Jerusalem at the height of our celebration. Bereish Simchosi, and don't forget Jerusalem. And so it kind of a bittersweet flavor to it. We're great and happy and victorious in Shushan, but we really belong in Jerusalem. So there are other cities. I think the city of Prague celebrates on the 15th because there is some belief or some possibility that it was walled at the time of Joshua's entering Israel. Other cities in Israel, Tzvas, they celebrate or read the Megillah twice, on the 14th and on the 15th, because there's some question as to whether it was a walled city. And so for some people, they get to have 2 days of Purim. This class is dedicated, was dedicated to the memory, Le'ili Nishmas, Shimon Alexander, the son of Reuven. His neshama should have an aliyah on this very special day, which it has anyway, because every neshama goes up higher on a Yom Tov. But remembering him and dedicating the Torah class to him will certainly benefit him and help him and bring more light to his Gan Eden. Happy Purim.